This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, growing fears in the Middle East over the Biden administration's talks with Iran. The U.S. trying to reassure its allies, and we'll show you Israel's options for dealing with a nuclear Iran. Outlook improving. The United States making major progress in the fight against COVID-19 as more cities and now more states are opening up. She became the first woman to serve as the general counsel at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in 2019. Then President Biden fired her. Why and what will this mean for people of faith in the workplace? And former Muslims who have found Jesus, now they're praying others will have the same experience. We'll tell you what night of the year Jesus most often appears to Muslims. All those stories and more are ahead in today's edition of CBN NewsWatch. We begin this half hour with top officials of the Biden administration and U.S. senators crisscrossing the Middle East, trying to calm growing concerns among U.S. allies over the president's move to try to once again talk to Iran about re-entering the nuclear deal which President Trump pulled out of. Democratic Senator Chris Coons telling reporters in Abu Dhabi that Iran has taken steps to develop a workable nuclear weapon and that the ability to deliver it.
I am concerned about the Iranian ballistic missile program and the ways in which they have both rapidly advanced their technology and proliferated regionally to a number of their proxies. There's a lot of understandable and legitimate concerns on the part of our partners in the region.
Iran has been steadily violating the nuclear deal to pressure the Biden team to lift the sanctions from the Trump administration. Stopping Iran from building nuclear weapons has been a big challenge for Israeli leaders for nearly 2 decades. Now a showdown may be coming. One former Israeli general has firsthand experience in destroying nuclear threats. He's proposing 5 steps Israel can take to stop Iran. Chris Mitchell brings us this CBN News exclusive interview from Jerusalem.
You're listening to the sound of Israeli pilots destroying Iraq's nuclear reactor in 1981. 26 years later, Israeli pilots destroyed this nuclear reactor in the Syrian desert. Retired General Amos Yadlin took part in both attacks. He flew with 7 other F-16 pilots to destroy Saddam Hussein's reactor in 1981. And as chief of military intelligence in 2007, helped plan the attack inside Syria.
In a way, maybe I'm the only human being on the globe who was involved in destroying 2.5 nuclear programs. And I guess we are discussing tonight the half.
We are, exactly. Tell us, General, what makes Iran in 2021 different than Iraq in 1981 and Syria in 2007?
The Iranians are ready for a possibility that attack will be launched against their nuclear facilities. So they put them under the ground, in bunkers, in tunnels, in mountains. They disperse them. They have a redundancy of programs. And they don't want to reach the nuclear bomb as fast as possible. They want to reach the bomb as safe as possible, not to pay the price.
In this exclusive CBN News interview, General Yadlin said the change in U.S. administrations had an impact on Iran.
After they see the change of administration in the U.S., they lost their fear, so they are breaching all the agreements on what they are allowed to do in the nuclear field.
Yet he still believes Israel can stop Iran's nuclear program and laid out 5 steps he believes could make it happen. One is a stronger diplomatic agreement that blocks Iran's path to a nuclear bomb. The second is sanctions or other means to make Iran pay a heavy price for its nuclear program. Third is covert cyber and clandestine operations.
Number 4 is Air Force taking off. It's a military attack, as it was done in Iraq and Syria. And number 5 is a regime change, because I think we can sleep good at night if there is a regime that's not calling for the destruction of Israel.
Yadlin says over the years, U.S. presidents from both parties declared their commitment to the state of Israel. Now he wants to put that in action.
I think the wisdom that we need in Jerusalem is how to take this title. We are committed to the security of Israel and make it an operational contingency plan agreed by the two countries.
A major obstacle? The U.S. and Israel look at Iran differently.
Iran is not existential threat to the U.S. Iran, with nuclear weapon, is existential threat to Israel.
With the recent attacks on Iran's nuclear program, Yadlin puts Iran about a year or a year and a half away from a nuclear bomb. He says Iran needs to enrich uranium to weapons-grade level and develop a nuclear warhead to be able to build a weapon. Now the race is on to see if diplomacy or military action will stop this threat to the existence of the Jewish state. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Here in the United States, the outlook in the battle against COVID-19 continues to improve as more cities and states open up. Nearly a third of Americans are fully vaccinated and nearly half have had at least one shot, and that's good because health experts say they should protect from the new variation of the virus from India.
Our vaccines are going to hold up against the variants from India.
That variant has already been identified in 3 states, and beginning today, the U.S. will ban travel from India by non-U.S. citizens. Also in the United States, the demand for shots is down, dropping 26% in the last 3 weeks to 2.4 million doses a day. Still, with people getting the vaccination, there's an ongoing debate over mask mandates, especially outdoors. Also, Florida is suspending all COVID-related public health orders statewide. And today, Oklahoma is expected to follow suit by withdrawing its state of emergency. German prosecutors have shut down one of the world's biggest international darknet platforms for child pornography. It's known as Boys Town, and it's used by some 400,000 registered members. Prosecutors said they arrested 3 German suspects who were the network's administrators. Pedophiles used it to exchange and watch pornography of children and toddlers, most of them boys from all over the world. A German police task force working with international authorities investigated the platform for months. The German Interior Minister called it one of the biggest investigative successes in the field of crime. And he said, we'll do everything within our power to protect these children from these disgusting crimes. Coming up, she became the first woman to be the top lawyer at the Equal Opportunity Commission in 2019. Then this year, President Biden fired her. Why? And what will this mean for people of faith in the workplace? We're going to bring you the story when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep. As the world watches from the outside,
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
President Joe Biden fired her, and the question now is why. In 2019, Sharon Gustafson became the first woman to serve as the leading attorney of the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. So what did she uncover about the EEOC that is deeply disturbing, and how could her dismissal hurt people of faith in the workplace? Heather Sells explains.
Sharon Gustafson has worked in employment law for decades, including taking a client to the Supreme Court in a pregnancy discrimination case. In 2019, she became the first woman to serve as general counsel for the EEOC. In early March, however, she found herself fired by her new boss, President Joe Biden.
I was given no reason at all for the termination.
But she had some clues. Weeks before the Biden administration asked for her resignation, Gustafson discovered that the final report on her religious discrimination work group had disappeared from the EEOC website. The agency enforces anti-discrimination laws across the board, and while it has defended employees' religious rights for years, Gustafson noticed an exception.
I had never seen any case that was brought to protect somebody who was discriminated against because they had traditional religious beliefs about sexual morality. So I started thinking, I wonder what other sorts of religious beliefs people may have that they feel are not protected. So I set up a religious discrimination work group.
Gustafson says that although the group would include all faiths, it faced internal opposition, even from leadership.
Who told me that they were uncomfortable with it.
She also faced pushback after taking on the Kroger grocery chain for firing 2 employees after they refused to wear gay pride aprons.
They simply said that because of their religious beliefs, they could not celebrate this.
LGBTQ advocates also spoke out against her work group, including revisions to a compliance manual, concerned that religious beliefs would be used to discriminate against sexual orientation. Gustafson argues it's possible to protect both.
All of these people can be protected at the same time. The law requires it, and it's the EEOC's job to find a way to do that.
Gustafson may never know exactly what triggered her firing. It's almost become tradition that political appointees in certain areas resign when administrations change. 2 of her predecessors did so even though they had time left in their term. Still, there's also precedent for general counsels staying with new presidents of other political parties. Going forward, there is concern that her firing will have a negative impact for workers who face discrimination for their beliefs.
I think what is going to happen is that this will have a chilling effect upon religious expression in the workforce.
The word gets out, to the public generally, that the EEOC is not interested in these types, certain types of religious discrimination claims, and that is to everybody's loss.
EEOC Commissioner Andrea Lucas calls the firing deeply troubling and warns that religious liberty has become a disfavored or second-class right in many areas of our society. But a spokeswoman for the commission told CBN News the EEOC has a long history of defending against discrimination based on religion in the workplace and will continue to vigorously enforce those laws.
I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and we can't work on Saturdays.
There's also an encouraging new movement in the private sector that urges people to bring their whole selves to work, including their faith. A number of top companies are creating faith-oriented employee groups alongside LGBTQ employee groups. It's a movement that Gustafson applauds.
We need to make sure that the federal government is fairly protecting all workers, that nobody has any reason to believe that certain rights supersede other rights or are somehow given higher priority.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Still ahead, Sarah Jakes Roberts, the daughter of famous pastor Bishop T.D. Jakes, offering insight in a new book about how you can break away from your fears and revolutionize your life. We're going to hear from her right after this.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
Broadcasting at 3.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Sarah Jakes Roberts is a businesswoman, best-selling author, and daughter of megachurch pastor Bishop T.D. Jakes. Now she's written a new book called Woman Evolve, Break Up with Your Fears and Revolutionize Your Life. Sarah told CBN's The Prayer Link program, the mistakes of your past can be used today to help you become the person God intended you to be.
Woman Evolve is really a book that I wrote for women who have found themselves in moments that I like to call Eve moments. Eve knew better, but didn't do better. And yet in that moment in the garden, when she knew better and didn't do better, God meets her right where she is and gives her a strategy on how to move to where he still had in mind in spite of what happened in that moment. And I found myself in so many Eve moments where I knew better, but just felt so stuck. And yet it was following this strategy that God laid out for Eve that ultimately led me to my own recognition of salvation and redemption. And I felt like if I could rescue Eve and maybe even myself, then I could show other women how to evolve into the women God had in mind as well.
And Pastor Sarah, you have been very transparent when it comes to your past. And in your book, you say you don't have to live your future. You don't have to live your future defined by your past. I love that. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've shared my story so much just about growing up as, Bishop Jakes' daughter, growing up under that spotlight, trying to figure out where I fit. I got pregnant as a teenager. I was 13 years old. I had my son at 14, and I felt so much shame, so much fear, so much disconnection from God. And I spent 10 years of my life really thinking that that is the only way that I would be defined. And it wasn't until I accepted my identity as a child of God, as someone who is available to access the grace of God, the restoration of God, that I really began to see my life change. And so as long as we see ourselves through the lens of what happened to us, we never get to see what God saw when he formed us in our mother's womb. And so I wholeheartedly believe that our past has the opportunity to propel us or restrict us. And it's all about whether or not we trust God with it.
Amen.
So good. All right, Sarah, you also talk about breaking up with your fears. What advice do you have for people who struggle with fear?
I hear this so much when I get to speak and connect with so many women. And even when I'm sorting through my own life and own issues, it's like, I'm afraid. I don't know why, but I'm afraid. I like to actually pinpoint what that fear is, because fear is often like the boogeyman, right? We think it's this big thing. And then we open up the closet of our heart, the closet of our soul, and we see that it's not as big as we thought it was, or that there's a strategy to help us fix it. And so I feel like if we can pinpoint, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, when we pinpoint it, we're able to dissect the thoughts connected with those fears and then speak God's truth over those fears.
Such a powerful word, Sarah. How can people set in motion, and you talk about this in the book, the seed that God planted in them so that they can become who they were meant to be?
You know, that is one of my favorite parts of the book, because I see Eve after she's been kicked out of the garden, after God says that her seed is going to be the seed that helps to really set in motion God's plan for redemption with humanity. And she has Cain and Abel, we know how that story ends. It doesn't turn out the way that maybe one would have anticipated. But then when she has Seth, that generation begins to call upon the name of the Lord again. And yet she doesn't get to live to see the fullness of what we know is Jesus coming into the world. But what she does know for sure is that she used everything that God gave her to set in motion God's strategy for humanity. Life is so much bigger than our experiences, and yet we get stuck in our own experiences. Our goal for our family, our communities, for our generation is to be able to say that I made a way for the grace of God, the power of God to come into my generation. I may not see the fullness of it. I may not see my family completely make it through here. But what I know for sure is that I set in motion a new paradigm, a new practice that allowed for God's grace and the fullness of what he wants for our families to be set in motion.
Powerful. Amen. Sarah, you and your husband pastor a church. You've also launched the Woman Evolve movement. Tell us about that and how you're able to do it all.
Well, I don't know if I'm able to do it all. I like to do everything one at a time, and I try to do it to the best of my ability. But saying no is really helpful. Woman Evolve is really just me helping women who feel like, you know what, I believe that there's more to me than what I've experienced in my life. I believe there's more to me than what I'm even experiencing in my now, and helping them listen, not to change their lives from the outside in, but from the inside out. What are some personal limitations, some personal barriers, some personal thoughts that are keeping us bound and restricted, and how can we establish the kingdom of heaven first within us, first within the way we speak to ourselves, the way we handle our own hearts, and then to the world around us. And so we get together under the context of community and sisterhood. We're transparent, we're vulnerable, but most importantly, we challenge ourselves to grow.
For more of this interview, be sure to watch the prayer link. You can catch it this evening at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, and you can find it on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, we're going to hear from former Muslims who have found Jesus and are praying others will have the same experience. We're also going to find out what night of the year Jesus most often appears to Muslims. All of that in our next story. When we come back, stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
From Washington, D.C.
Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation.
Uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody, John Jessup, Jenna Browder, and Eric Phillips, bringing you the political news that matters.
Regulations on the energy industry are going to have dramatic ripple effects throughout the economy.
news you can trust.
We're people who are committed to protecting the most weakest and the most vulnerable.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6.
The Islamic holy month of Ramadan comes to an end next week, and as it does, Muslims are praying and fasting with greater fervor, particularly on the night of destiny when they seek a spiritual breakthrough. Millions of Christians around the globe are also interceding on their behalf. CBN is joining with Uncharted Ministries for a 5-night event featuring interviews and prayers with former Muslims who now follow Jesus. Wendy Griffith explains.
Former Muslims are sharing their stories of discovering Jesus and praying that others will have the same experience.
Once you have Jesus in your life, it just changes everything.
Nadine, Afshin, and Yazra talk about growing up Muslim and finding the truth during the week-long outreach, Jesus and Ramadan.
He's not a mad, angry God who created me, but he's mad at me. He's not that. He created me with so much love.
Tom Doyle of Uncharted Ministries says the Muslim background believers will take questions and pray, not just for Muslims, but for Christians to learn how to share the gospel with them.
We're going to have Emily from your team in Jerusalem and Josh from our team here in Dallas asking them questions. How did they find Christ in Iran, in Baghdad, Iraq, and sharing their stories. And then they're going to give a call to action to believers in the West on how to reach out to Muslims.
And why is it important to do this during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan?
Yeah, you know, that last week is the most special week during Ramadan because there's what Muslims call the night of destiny, the night of power, where they just cry out to God. Do you know, Wendy, that is the #1 night of the year that Jesus appears to Muslims in dreams. So they're searching for God, and Jesus accommodates that request, but they're shocked and they're surprised when a man in a white robe comes and tells them that he loves them and he died for them on the cross.
Jesus in Ramadan airs May 8th through 13th on CBN and Uncharted social media platforms. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. It's a message I hope you will post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence. Pursue, persist, and fall in love with the process. These will bring about progress and move you so much closer to God's promises. Hold fast to this truth and make this a terrific Tuesday. Another step in making this a wonderful week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind you before we go that you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can also find them online anytime at cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us at the address right there at the bottom of your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you will make time to join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Again, make it a terrific Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.